Small, low-lying islands are the front line in the battle against climate change. They're disproportionately impacted by rising sea levels, coastal erosion, and more frequent and intense storm surges. That's why over a third of the population of the tiny Pacific nation of Tuvalu have applied to migrate to Australia. They hope to make the move on a so-called climate visa, a landmark scheme designed to help people escape the islands as they become increasingly uninhabitable. Tuvalu's population of 11,000 lives on atolls scattered across the Pacific. It's one of the countries most at risk from the effects of climate change. Scientists fear it could be underwater within 35 years. Let's bring in Gaia Vince. She's an award-winning science writer and author. Her latest book is called Nomad Century: How Climate Migration Will Reshape Our World. Gaia, welcome to DW. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, we heard that there are thousands of Tuvaluans want to leave their homeland, but the Australian scheme will actually only grant 280 climate visas. What happens to the rest of the applicants?
Well, this is an agreement by which people apply every year. So it's 280 a year. Actually, the ballot was opened around a month ago and it closed on Friday, and already more than 5,000 have applied. So almost half the population has applied for this visa, but it's estimated, in 10 years, around 40% of the population may have moved to Australia. And this is a climate agreement which is remarkable, not because it's the first such agreement, but because it's the first one which is looking at relocating the entire population of a nation to a safer other nation due to climate change.
Mm-hmm. Climate change is threatening already today the lives and livelihoods of millions of people around the globe, and you know, already today a huge driver of displacement. You wrote a book on the topic, so tell me, how will climate migration reshape our world?
Yes, well, I mean, it's already happening. We're seeing last year some 2 million people in Europe were affected by drought, for example. If you think about 200 people or 280 or whatever from Tuvalu are going to Australia, I mean, around 200 people died in floods in Valencia just last year. You know, so these are very small numbers, and this agreement is a tiny drop in the ocean, but it is significant because, of course, every life counts. And what we're seeing as the temperature rises, as more energy gets locked into the atmosphere, we're seeing far more extreme weather conditions. And what's happening is parts of the world are becoming unlivable, and that will only increase as the decades go. So, you know, we are expecting the most severe events, the most unlivable conditions are already being felt in the tropics, and that tropical band of unlivability will expand further north and south. And the more livable places, and these are not places which will be unaffected by climate change, but they're places that are better able to adapt. They will be in the north. So we're already seeing this movement of life, of plants, of animals, of people, of capital, investments, agriculture, industry. All of human activity will start to move north, and it's something which we need to prepare for. It can bring huge opportunities to countries in the north that are suffering falling birth rates, but it also comes with a lot of challenges, and we are seeing a lot of right-wing rhetoric that is very anti-migration at the moment.
Yeah. How can the world prepare for this kind of scenario?
Well, there are many ways, and agreements like the one that Australia and Tuvalu have reached is one way. We need to start thinking very urgently about what it means when a country loses sovereignty. You know, when a territory no longer exists, what does happen to that sovereignty? What happens to Pacific Island nations, low-lying Indian Ocean atolls? What happens when a third of the country of places like Bangladesh become unlivable? We need to think about how these people are best relocated. It's much better to do it in a managed way, in a sensible, planned way before that emergency happens, before we're looking at evacuations, so that we can help provide those industrial bases, that new housing. We can replan the demographics of our world, which at the moment in the northern nations is very aging. There are lots of care needs. There isn't that youthful labour force to bring in the taxes that can help keep that social contract going. And at the same time, there's huge potential in some of the most risky places on our planet, places where the population is still young and vibrant and has that potential to, you know, that human potential for labour, for ingenuity, to really to bring forth what the next generation, the 21st generation human bases that we're going to have. New cities are going to have to be built and in the far north, and they will need populations.
Yeah, there's huge opportunity in making something positive out of a horrific situation. But already today, and you mentioned it earlier, migration is a hot topic in many countries that would be possible destinations for climate refugees. And the tendency right now is to curb migration rather than letting in more people. And we're already seeing labor shortages, you know, care shortages, all of these problems that you pointed out that need a solution, and that maybe migration would be a solution to already today. It's not really in the cards, especially with the far right exerting so much power right now here in Europe, but also in the United States. So how optimistic are you that the international community will rise to the occasion, that there will be political will to actually make all these adjustments?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. We are seeing absolute lack of leadership, both on climate reality, on being the honest appraisal of where we are with this climate crisis, which is in a very dangerous position. We're also not seeing honesty about human migration, human mobility, which is actually, you know, inevitable. It's completely natural. It has always taken place. We are all the end products of migration, which continues. So we do need honesty. I would say we are going through a blip at the moment, quite a bad place with this kind of abdication of responsibility from centrist and left-wing parties, but left and right, really, to challenge these far-right narratives, these tropes, which are based on falsities. Almost all of what comes out is based on false narrative, and it's very divisive. It is not a solution. Migration is already underway. It is inevitable. We cannot turn people back. We cannot turn people away. That it just doesn't work. If you think about the historical basis of where we are now, we have had, you know, most of history, leaders have wanted to bring people in. They've wanted borders have been there to stop people leaving. It is an economic. It is economic fact that the more people you have, the better the stronger the labor force, the stronger the economy. And so economists will tell you of the desperate need that pretty much all of European nations, including the United States, including, you know, even the most xenophobic places like Russia, they absolutely need more people to come in. They need immigration. They cannot survive without it. We are seeing a dishonest narrative that claims to be able to turn people away. That is not. That is never going to work, and that is never going to be a solution. So before long, we are going to have to face up to this truth, and nations will be competing over immigrants, and the immigrants will go to the places where they feel most welcome, where they have the most opportunities. So it's worth bearing that in mind for the decades to come, when we really need them for any sort of economic growth. Most economies are stagnating at the moment. And I would bring up the example of Spain, actually, where they have been the leaders have been very pragmatic and said, you know, we can go down that European paradigm of being very anti-migrant, of saying we can reduce migration, or we can be honest and say, look, we want a stronger economy. We want more opportunity and potential for people who live here, and that that is absolutely based on having a stronger economy, and therefore we're going to accept more migration and we're going to make it work. We're going, and in that time, you know, Spain's GDP has grown far greater than the rest of the European nations. It's also, you know, they've managed to raise the minimum wage by 50% because they've done it through careful policies. And I think that's a lesson we can all learn. If we want stronger economies, we have to be real, we have to be pragmatic, and we have to be honest about what that takes.
Yeah, Gaia, we'll have to wrap up in a second, but I don't just want to look at the countries that might take in migrants. I also want to talk about the people who are actually preparing to get on the move and the challenges that climate migration might pose for preserving their culture. You know, the culture of places like Tuvalu. What happens to the culture if the land no longer exists or the people who used to inhabit it don't live there anymore?
Yes, thank you for bringing this up, because this is something that often gets lost, and it's really very difficult, and it's something that affects people in Tuvalu. It's affecting people in various parts of Africa where they've been forced to relocate because of persistent drought or whatever it is, low-lying islands. It's something that will increasingly affect people in Germany and in Europe when they have to leave somewhere because it is persistently flooded, or they live near the coast and that coastline is eroding and it's no longer safe. People will have to retreat. They will have to be managed to retreat. And at the moment, the only people facing up to that really is the insurance industry, which is pulling out of certain places because they actually have to be pragmatic and look ahead. But yes, when you lose that land, you lose that home, you lose a part of yourself, you lose your identity, because that is tied very much to language, to place, to tradition, to where your ancestors are buried, to where the fairy stories are located. And when that no longer exists, it exists only in memory or story, that is a cultural loss for all of humanity, not just those individuals. And I think that one of the things that isn't talked about enough is that when people come as migrants, migrating is a very difficult thing to do, even if you're doing it for love or, you know, as an adventure to study overseas or whatever. If you're doing it as a refugee, that has that added trauma of having to remake your life somewhere where you don't necessarily speak the language, you don't have the same skin color, you don't worship the same God, you have all these added difficulties. We need to do so much more to make that passage easier so people can, in addition to the identity that they already have, can take on the new identity and are thought of by the existing community as one of them, a new Berliner, a new person from Munich, a new person from London or Cardiff or Sweden or wherever. And they are thought of as a new citizen, and they think of themselves as a new citizen, because only then can you align over that shared vision of building a future city together. And that's what I think has been missing in so many places and caused such tension. And it does not help, of course, if leadership is not behind that, and if leadership is being divisive just to stoke populist votes.
The science writer and author Gaia Vince, thank you so much. Great speaking to you today.
Thanks for letting me on.